это и будем выступать в таком-то порядке, потом я сделаю вступление, пройду свою часть.
Ага, окей.
А как нас назвать? Что такое? Кто там такие, типа?
Ну, никто.
Скажи, как есть.
Да.
Что, ну, типа, что это Володя, это Стас, это
Да.
я?
Ну, что мы сотрудничаем вот в рамках спильного, и Стас еще отдельно сепаратистский сотрудничает в партии.
Ну, ты, не знаю, можно сказать, там кто-то редактор спильного, там это активист, короче, там, и
мне нечего про себя
исследователь
сказать.
политики памяти, а ты скажешь, что ты типа политологиня.
Ничего. Так с чем ты начнешь? Типа, о чем ты говоришь? Типа, challenges, да? О. Что ты начинаешь, типа, с challenges, типа, да? Да, мы так оставили это в презентации?
Да.
Okay, then I believe we could start now. So let's start with a quick introduction. This is so we are left activists from Ukraine who are like connected to different initiatives. For example, Volodymyr. This is Volodymyr, and he is in the Spilne journal. Commons Journal magazine, which is like quite a big leftist magazine in Ukraine, which we'll see for like in the course of presentation. This is Stas, who is a political activist of social movement, political party initiative, and also a member of Spilne magazine, contributor to Spilne magazine and September magazine. I'm Katya, and I'm a part of some feminist and LGBTQ activist initiatives. So we will start our presentation on Ukraine and about left and right and challenges which left are facing right now in Ukraine.
Thank you, Katya. I will talk mostly about the challenges, and if you remember what Marx wrote in economic manuscripts, let's keep it like this for a while. He was quite optimistic. He said that mankind sets before itself only the tasks that it can solve, challenges that it can solve. And Gramsci really liked this quote. It's somehow related to his optimism of the will. But I will be mostly focusing on pessimism of reason. And we have plenty of grounds to be pessimistic. And today I will focus on the ideological challenges set forth by mankind for the left in Ukraine, and Stas and Katya will talk about organizational challenges. What I consider ideological challenges are the recent trend of militarism, much more long-lasting trend of anti-communism and nationalism, exacerbated by the recent events and ongoing war, and the related thing which I called Occidentalism, which is this idealized picture of the West as an effective manager that will come to our backward country and set things right. The organizational challenges for the left, the challenges for optimism of the will are violence of far-right groups that have weapons and have huge resources. The atomization of the proletariat on various levels, starting from the level of production and ending with their organizations. And the last one is the internal challenge of the left itself, is its fragmentation and feuding among the left organizations, movements, and proto-parties. So since the war started, it drastically changed the ideological landscape in which Ukrainian left has to work. I would even say that this militarist discourse crept into the battlefield of ideology at the latest stage of Maidan protests, when they turned violent, and then this strict divide between our guys and the enemies was installed. But then, of course, with the war, with the open warfare, it got worse, and it crystallized into this ideology of hybrid warfare or hybrid threat that initially was part of jargon of the US military experts, especially after 9/11. Then it resurged after the war in Ukraine, first through Western liberal experts who applied this notion to Russia, and then it spread to everyone. Everyone now is using it, including Russia itself, who suspects the West of waging hybrid warfare against Russia. What is new in this notion as compared to more established idea about the war and about friends and enemies, this Schmittian distinction between friend and enemy, is that it's full of postmodern fluidity of this indistinction. There is no distinction between peaceful terrain, peaceful territory, and war zone, war theater. There is no distinction between open warfare with weapons and killing and discursive struggle. So it's basically the same, either you holding a rifle or you holding a pen. There is no distinction between soldiers and civilians. Everyone, journalist, student, activist, can be regarded as a soldier, as an enemy agent in some way. They call it hybrid soldier. Yeah, so all of us are actually hybrid soldiers. And it also elicited the response on the part of the government and on the part of the far right, the response of hybrid warfare that they have to wage against these hybrid enemies. And this response is the most dangerous. Yeah, so in this discourse you have two levels: the interpretative level, at which you ascribe the notion of hybridity, this hybrid threat, to your opponent, and the prescriptive level. So once you identified who your enemy is, then what would you do? What would be your tactics of fighting this enemy? The only thing that remains from the more conventional concept of waging a war is that there is one coordinating center behind the hybrid enemy, and this is Kremlin, Putin, or Putin's advisors, or towers of Kremlin, yeah, that feud between each other, but they are still controlling all these scattered hybrid agents. There is a slight distinction there are inflections of this ideological discourse as used by the official media, official experts, and by the far right. So if the official media and experts stress the threat itself, the enemy, trying to identify who is this hybrid threats, there may be peaceful protests on the streets of Ukraine, which may have various reasons and goals, workers' protests, protests of mothers who don't like their children being forcefully taken to the war. These may be journalist articles. This may be even articles published in New York Times. This was a famous thing famous case when Poroshenko called one of the articles an act of hybrid war. Of course, Poland is waging a hybrid war now. It's the recent trend to say that Poland is our new hybrid enemy, even more dangerous than Russia. So the state is concerned with identifying the enemy, and the far right is concerned with inventing a strategy to fight this enemy, and this strategy is strategy of purification. Yeah, if state stresses ideological labeling, then the far right stresses purification. So they are self-styled hybrid warriors, protecting the nation against these unpure hybrid elements, because hybridity is a mixture, is impure. Yeah, and in the far right discourse, of course, you need purity. The only thing is that this enemy for the far right is not clearly identified. It's not the Jews, it's not the Muslims, it's not this conventional Nazi enemy. It could be any one of us. It could be a white person, purely Ukrainian speaking, but he will still be hybrid. And the far right considers themselves as this immune system of society who are waging hybrid war against the hybrid invasion, the hybrid threat, with hybrid methods, which means subtle ways of installing terror, scare into people. Sometimes these are really just verbal assaults. But since everyone knows what the far right can do, what the Nazis can do to you, this is really terrifying. Yeah. What would the left respond to this postmodern ideology of continuous hybrid warfare discourse? Is a clear anti-war agenda, which should also comprise an element of analysis, which should be based on anti-imperialism and should be based on the standpoint of proletariat, of Ukrainian proletariat on both sides of the conflict. Clearly identify the political, economical grounds for this war, and propose some coherent way out, coherent way to reach peace. And this is a very controversial question, and I cannot say that we have succeeded in developing this strategy. Anti-communism is the other more traditional challenge for the left. I don't think I should talk much more about this, because you have an idea what's happening in the Eastern Europe. Communism basically equals totalitarianism, which equals Russia, which equals separatism in Ukraine. So everyone who is communist is, of course, a separatist. The only thing that happened recently is this a series of anti-communist communist laws that have been adopted in 2015, and that had already had an impact on the ground. It's not only all the statues of Lenin falling. It's not only names of the regional centers, toponyms of the regional centers being changed. Hundreds of thousands of streets changing their names. But it's also actually persecution of people who use communist symbols. Sometimes it's ridiculous ones. One story is a drunken man who just got a red flag somewhere from the village club. This flag was in some cellar, and he just took it out and started running around with this flag, and then he was put in jail. Then the Communist Party was banned on this law. The prosecution could not ban it on the grounds of condoning separatism, but they succeeded in banning it through this law. And the upside of this is this weird, totally irrational memory policy that stresses this, that clearly defines whom you should consider a hero in Ukrainian history, and you actually have a list of heroes, and you have a criminal punishment for lack of respect for these heroes. So you can imagine being a historian and formulating sentence so that you should not hurt this hero. The problem is that sometimes these heroes killed each other during Ukrainian history, and you have to deal with this. That yeah, but the upside of this is that you create actual enemies like Poland, Hungary, Romania, whoever. The obvious this is probably the easiest challenge for the Ukrainian left, because you should answer it with enlightenment. Yeah, you should just write articles as Stas does. You should give presentations. You should talk to the scholars and explain them that this is threatening you directly as historians, for example. And I think many liberal historians understand this. Yeah, I had one more slide. I just it was destroyed in the process. Yeah, the last threat that I have identified is the threat of Occidentalism. So this idealized picture of the West, which is based on European values, which will come and set things straight by fighting corruption, by introducing liberal reforms, by educating us. This ideology of Occidentalism, so worshipping the West, basically it means identifying with your Orientalist image, introjecting it, and perceiving the West as this as super ego for yourself. It started in Maidan, but now it's actually is degrading. It's not that people got disenchanted with European values. It's just that Ukrainian national bourgeoisie is also not really happy with this, and the left can benefit from this by explaining that Ukraine is basically got into a completely peripheral situation towards Europe, that it is being exploited and it will be exploited, and all the European values for Ukraine are just a smoke screen for depleting its resources and exploiting its labor power. And now we slowly came to organizational challenges about which we'll hear from Stas.
Yeah. Я попробую говорить немного короче, потому что у нас осталось немного времени.
So I will speak shorter because we have not so much time.
После Майдана правые силы стали самостоятельной и влиятельной политическим агентом.
After the Maidan, far-right forces managed to become an independent and powerful agent.
Если до этого абсолютно маргинальная неонацистская группа Социал-национальная ассамблея не могла собрать и, наверное, и 30 людей на протест,
if before that time very marginal socialist nationalist assembly couldn't gather even 30 people on a march,
то теперь они имеют собственный вооруженный батальон из около 4000 людей.
Now they have their own military battalion, which consists of 4,000 people.
Также они имеют свою политическую партию под названием Национальный корпус.
They also have now their own political party, which is called National Corpus.
Помимо этого, другие ультраправые группы также не отстают от своих коллег и выстраивают структуры по всей Украине.
Other nationalistic groups, organizations are also trying to build structures, organizational structures around the whole Ukraine.
Они активно работают с молодежью, проводят летние лагеря.
They are working with young people, they are doing summer camps for children and young people.
Где пытаются воспитать у них патриотические чувства и научить обращаться с оружием.
Where they're trying to raise children with patriotic values and to teach them how to use weapons.
Они при этом ультраправые активно работают с государством, с украинскими спецслужбами, силовыми органами.
Ultra-right are also working actively with Ukrainian security forces, like
силовыми органами.
Yeah.
Полиция, работают с полицией.
Like police.
Также им удалось достигнуть очень большой уровня толерантности в либеральной среде. Либералы постоянно идут с ними на кооперацию.
There's also some kind of higher level of tolerance in the liberal milieu. A lot of liberals are now able and willing to cooperate with right-wing activists.
Но тут следует понимать, что и сами либеральные группы, они также очень сильно поправели, и то, что ранее могли себе позволить только крайне правые в парламенте, теперь стало органической частью риторики либералов.
But what should we also mention that liberal milieu is now also much more patriotic, and if earlier only what earlier only nationalists could do in the parliament, now it is some kind of organic way of presenting itself for liberals.
Фактически в Украине нельзя представить открыто левую акцию или мероприятие, которое бы, в организации которого вы бы 100 раз не подумали о безопасности.
De facto, it is impossible to organize a leftist event in Ukraine without thinking 100 times about security of this event.
При этом нужно понимать, что левые очень маргинальны.
We also should say that left organizations and left in general is quite marginal.
Старые левые партии, как Коммунистическая партия Украины или Социалистическая партия Украины, потерпели полного фиаско, краха.
Old left in Ukraine, like Communist Party of Ukraine or Socialistic Party of Ukraine, are now have complete fiasco and don't have any good electoral results.
Они потеряли поддержку также не только из-за репрессий, давления со стороны власти, своей ошибочной политики, но также из-за того, что из-за аннексии Крыма и войны именно в этих регионах была основная часть их электората.
They've lost their power not only because of governmental repression or their own weird way of doing policy, but also because of the annexation of Crimea of Crimea and were in eastern regions of Ukraine, because these are the regions which usually elected these parties.
Единственная непартийная левая, которая до Майдана имела разветвленные структуры в областях, это была организация «Боротьба».
The only organization, not a party, which had a lot of its members around the whole Ukraine was the organization «Боротьба», struggle.
Короткий период после Майдана она влилась в протесты на юго-востоке страны, и ей даже удалось возглавить протесты в Одессе и в Харькове.
Soon after the Maidan, they started to support protests in eastern regions, and they even managed to head the protests in Odessa.
Но не имея независимой классовой позиции, в итоге она оказалась в хвосте, в арьергарде российской политики империалистической.
But because of lacking the independent party vision, party policy, партийной?
Ну, классовой.
Class policy, they found themselves in like following Russian policy, Russian politics. Imperialist.
Анархические группы очень фрагментированы, да.
Anarchistic groups are very fragmented.
Очень тяжело сказать, какое количество вообще есть анархистов в Украине.
It is hard to say how much anarchists there are in general in Ukraine.
Они не представляют никакой политической силы и скорее похожи на клубы по интересам.
Usually they are not some political power, but rather club of interests or clubs of interests or something like that.
То, что я сегодня посмотрел в интернете, их группы в основном в социальных сетях не превышают там 300-400 человек.
What I looked up today in the internet is that their social web pages in different social medias are not overcoming 400-500 followers.
Также анархисты очень сильно поправили, они во многом переняли националистическую риторику, и некоторые из них даже брали участие в военных действиях на стороне Украины.
A lot of anarchists are now also much more right-wing, and they got all of this nationalistic rhetoric, and some of them have also fight it in Ukrainian war in the Ukraine.
Также появился и получил большое значение новый феномен так званых левых националистов.
There is also a new phenomenon which is actually for now quite big in Ukraine. It's left nationalists.
Во Львове в какой-то момент слились в одну организацию, в одну группу левеющие националисты и, наоборот, правеющие социалисты, марксисты.
So at some point in Lvov, western city in Ukraine, two organizations, two different organizations, one of which was nationals who were getting more left-wing, and also socialists who are getting more right-wing, come up to create one organization which is autonomous resistance.
Автономный опер, конечно, существовал до этого, но он был ультраправой молодежкой свободы.
Autonomous resistance was existing before that time. It was ultra right-wing young organization of Svoboda party, nationalistic party in Ukraine.
Сегодня они себя позиционируют как сторонники социализма, демократического социализма и освободительного национализма.
Today they represent themselves as democratic, as following democratic, демократическое что социализма? Democratic socialism agenda, and also освободительного
национализма.
Боже, как будто освободительный. Liberatory nationalism.
Да, они во многом перенимают националистические мифы и пытаются их использовать для того, чтобы получить симпатию у националистически настроенных граждан Украины, граждан Западной Украины.
They're trying to use nationalistic myths to get the support from nationalistic and patriotic citizens of Western Ukraine.
Я думаю немножко дальше про поправении левых расскажет Катя. Да.
So yeah, I will continue with like this right-wing tendency in Ukraine. For example, when we speak about feminist movement, we should also understand that it's getting much more right-wing than it was before. And many liberal feminists, for example, they're talking a lot about women in the army, that women should get a right to be in the Ukrainian army, and that they are actually fighting in the war in eastern Ukraine. But very rarely it is they are talking about how actually this war is influencing women in these war regions, and that army in general is is actually a patriarchal institution which like won't be very much changed with like more women in this institution, to my opinion. And we should also understand that nationalistic organizations and people who are actually right now fighting in the eastern regions from this like different nationalistic battalions, they actually are not really fans of feminism, and when feminists try to support like nationalistic agenda, they don't get anything anything back, because we might as examples, we might speak about 8th of March, when different nationalists tried to prevent the feminist march on this day. We might also speak about the accident which happened in my university in Kiev, where feminists tried to organize a demonstration against harassment in the university, but some nationalists, something like 40 nationalist members of nationalistic organizations came and tried to prevent it, and actually succeeded in it. They get to the campus and tried to ban the demonstration, and it didn't happen on that day, but the next day the outburst, that the clash was much more than the first day, and much more people came and tried to say that it's our university and nobody can come to us and say that you cannot speak about that, about that. And so much more people were involved eventually in feministic agenda. Right. Okay. But also there are some good initiatives, very good initiatives. For example, we might speak about the research of Oksana Dudchak, who is based in Kiev, I believe, and she wrote a research about women who work in clothes manufacturers in Ukraine. And there are a lot of Western brands like Hugo Boss, Marks and Spencer, and some very famous brands which clothes is manufactured in Ukraine. But women who are actually doing this job are getting very low paid. For example, I don't know, 100 years in a month. 100 euros in a month is a general payment for their work, but one jacket which they make can cost up to 160 euros or something like this. So it's actually to speak about such problems is a possibility to find a way out and to form a real trade union and to form a powerful platform for women to organize themselves. Another example I might call about this nationalistic tendencies is recent Kiev Pride Parade, which happened this summer, and it was also more liberal, and organizers tried to put it the way that we are also part of the Ukraine, we are citizens of Ukraine, so as citizens of Ukraine, LGBTQ people also fight in the war in Ukraine, and so on. And very powerful is this discussion which was caused by this exact slogan, "Make love, not civil war," because in Ukraine it's kind of comments prohibited. You cannot call the war in eastern Ukraine civil war. And many organizers and feminists and LGBTQ activists told that this girl was not right. She made it so that people will think all LGBTQ people are separatists, and so they actually got angry about this poster. But then in that it was so that it was actually not a reference to Ukrainian situation, current situation, but a reference to some Marvel comic. So it was, very stupid in the end. There was also present queer anarcho feminists and activists, LGBTQ activists, like one column of them who tried to say that we should not try to feed this nationalistic discourse because it will not pay off, it will not help us, it will not liberate us, and our liberation doesn't is not connected to that. And for example, such posters as which you can see is the paraphrasing of a famous Ukrainian nationalistic phrase, "Death to the glory to Ukraine, death to the enemies." But on the placard, on this poster, you can see "Death to the nation, queer to the enemies." And nationalistic also tried to find who was doing this poster, because this poster is promoting genocide of Ukrainian people and some really schizophrenic ideas. So it is actually very hard in Ukraine to break this nationalistic and patriotic consensus, to break out of this nationalistic discourse, even if you promoting feminist or LGBTQ rights.
Теперь, может, мы поговорим о каких-то инициативах, которые имеют перспективу развиваться.
Now we'll talk about organizations which have some perspectives in developing, and spreading.
Фактически сегодня осталось две группы и организации, вокруг которых группируются левые.
There are now actually two main groups around which left can organize in Ukraine.
Первое — это журнал «Спільне».
The first one is Common Journal,
который занимается анализом ситуации в Украине слева.
Which is analyzing Ukraine's situation from the left.
Также он занимается разработкой теоретических проблем.
Also, it is working on theoretical problems and theoretical issues.
В этом году этот журнал стал самым популярным левым журналом в Украине.
This year, this journal is the most popular Ukrainian left journal.
И перешел, наверное, очень большую, у него очень большое количество подписчиков, как для левого ресурса в Украине. Он перешел границу в 5000, да.
And now it has pretty many followers in social media, like 5,000 people, and it's quite a big amount for Ukraine right now.
Ни одна другая левая инициатива не имеет такого количества, подписчиков.
Any other leftist initiative doesn't have such amount of subscribers.
Конечно, намного больше людей читает сам журнал, и ему удалось выйти с узкой академической и такой элитарной аудитории на более широкую, включая представителей рабочего класса.
And much more people are reading actually the articles, so now it is a journal not only for left intellectuals, but also for the working people.
Следующая инициатива называется «Социальное движение».
Another initiative is called Social Movement.
Это инициатива, которая пытается создать новую левую партию.
This initiative is trying to create a new political party, left political party in Ukraine.
Как я уже ранее говорил, но не все были, эта инициатива строится на объединении левых интеллектуалов, преимущественно с Киева, и рабочих активистов независимых профсоюзов.
This initiative is built upon the collaboration of left intellectuals and workers all around the Ukraine.
При этом она выступает как бы за... Она не является леворадикальной, да, организацией, она выступает за такие реформистские довольно социальные преобразования в Украине.
It's not left radical party or initiative, but rather an initiative which is aiming to reform Ukraine and to reform it in a more social way.
Хотя я вам скажу по секрету, конечно, большинство ее членов и активистов стоят на таких революционных позициях.
But I will tell you the secret that
имеют революционные взгляды.
People who are doing this initiative having a revolutionary vision.
На презентации скриншот сайта организации.
This is the site of its organization.
Да, где главный лозунг это «Свободный человек вместо свободного рынка, солидарность вместо конкуренции».
Main motto slogan is "Free man, not the free market", and
solidarity instead of competition.
Solidarity instead of competition.
При этом нельзя сказать, что это массовая левая организация. Фактически в ней состоит не более 100 человек.
But we cannot say that it's like mass leftist organization. It is not more than 100 people who are activists who belong to this initiative.
Но важно понимать, что как спильное, так и социальное движение являются организациями, вокруг которого группируются другие левые, которые принадлежат к другим группам, автономным, независимым.
But we should understand that Spilne and social movement are some kind of leftist course around which other lefts in Ukrainian can organize and can collaborate with.
Часто в акциях социального руха берут участие, в том числе и анархисты.
Often in the demonstration of social movement, also anarchists take part.
Я не скажу, что также, да, мы знаем, что делать дальше, что у нас есть ответы, как развивать организацию в этих условиях, в которых мы оказались.
I will not say that we have clear vision and clear answers to how to develop the organization in such situation which we have in Ukraine.
Мы находимся в определенном тупике.
We're in some kind of dead end.
Так как общество очень пассивно, а активная часть общества ангажирована в националистическую идеологию.
Because society is mainly passive, and the society which is the part of society which is active is usually nationalistic minded.
Но мы как маленькие слепые котики идем.
But as blind little kittens, we are trying to find our way.
Danke.
So, thank you. So, yeah, now you can answer some questions, please.
I have rather two questions. The one is from understanding how does Poland come into play in that situation, as you said. And the second one is question of the concept. So would you say that the war within Ukrainian society is kind of a total war where the fascists have kind of a dominant storytelling of, well, everything is war and you have to struggle for our nation like that, or is it, so how did they came to that point that they could dominate this discourse?
Start with Poland, maybe?
Ну, давайте по Польше, это же историк.
По Польше.
Историческое. Okay, I will respond on the war question, and Stas probably tell more about the Poland case, because it's mostly is this history memory policy that caused the current strained relations with Poland. Okay, so tell something about Poland.
Да. Но мне кажется, что существует определенная...
Я переведу его.
Да, окей. Что существует определенная несогласованность между действиями Института национальной памяти и группой, которая организована вокруг президента Украины.
I think that there is a certain level of incoherence between the acts of the Institute of National Memory, its behavior, and the group around the President of Ukraine.
Если Институт национальной памяти пытается продвигать классический националистический нарратив, где Украина находится в окружении врагов, с одной стороны, это будут поляки, которые вечно угнетали украинцев, а с другой стороны, это будут русские, которые также испокон веков.
The Institute of National Remembrance trying to promote basically a standard nationalist narrative that Ukraine is surrounded by the enemies. On the one hand, these are Poles, and on the other, these are Russians, the nations that have traditionally suppressed Ukraine.
Одной из главных идей главы Института национального памяти есть идея про то, что во время Второй мировой войны на Западной Украине, на Волыни, происходила польско-украинская война.
One of the main ideas of the head of this Institute of National Remembrance is that during the Second World War, there was a war inside of the war between Ukrainians and Poles.
Что армия Краева воевала с украинской повстанческой армией, и они как бы были равносильными силами.
That Polish Armia Krajowa, the anti-fascist army in Poland, fought with a Ukrainian Ukrainian insurgent army, which was who were basically allies of fascists at some point. But he claims that these two forces were equal.
При том, что польская сторона, наоборот, говорит, что украинцы вырезали поляков.
The Polish side claims that these were actually Ukrainians that massacred Poles.
Но армия Краева просто защищала людей.
And Armia Krajova was just protecting people.
Вот. На самом деле это как бы очень сложный вопрос, который стоило бы отделить от политики. И были, конечно, случаи, когда армия Краева уничтожала украинские села, но также нельзя отрицать того, что УПА, Украинская повстанческая армия и организация украинских националистов, имела антипольские взгляды и, безусловно, убивала либо стимулировала выселение поляков из сегодняшней территории Волынской и Львовской области.
We should clearly divide political and historical questions, and we should recognize that Armia Krajova sometimes did perpetrate killings of Ukrainians, but on the other hand, Ukrainian insurgent army did expel and kill Poles on the territories of Volhynia and Lviv regions of Ukraine, so basically committing to what we can call a genocide.
Позиция же как бы президентского лобби в том, что нам нужно действовать более прагматически. То есть какие-то моменты мы можем забыть или сделать вид, что мы идем на диалог, на переговоры. Вот.
On the other hand, the circle around the president thinks more pragmatically. They think that on some occasions we should forget about some issues and engage in a dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
May I add one thing? The problem is also that our ultra-conservative and nationalist government is using or actually even building up the anti-Ukrainian resentment in Poland, and talking about the Wołyń and the Ukrainian insurgent army and Stepan Bandera like all the time. It's one of the most important topics of history in Poland, which of course in this situation creates absolute tension. And from what I know, the situation in the regions of Poland, I think in Przemysl, there was some Ukrainian march, and it was almost, you know, like before a pogrom. That was really, there was some clashes because Polish nationalists attacked the Ukrainian march, and this is really something hard to look at.
Ну да, как бы есть такая проблема. Но что до этого историческая политика в Польше была более мягкой, и лидер Института национальной памяти польского очень часто приезжал в Украину, и проводились конференции, на которых обсуждались эти вопросы.
But before that, the Polish national memory policy was much milder. The head of the Polish Institute of National Remembrance came to Ukraine, participated in conferences.
Да, сейчас новое консервативное правительство очень сильно акцентирует на этом внимание, и насколько можно судить, как бы польские граждане воспринимают эту информацию про то, что украинцы их убивали, да, и ретранслируют их на сегодняшних мигрантов в Польше.
It's clear, of course, that since the conservative government came to power in Poland, it started putting much more emphasis on these historical questions, and the Polish population in general received this message of that Ukrainians killed Poles and they hate them, and this sentiment was transferred to Ukrainian migrants in Poland. Okay, then probably I will briefly answer about the question on war. Why this ideological notion of this total hybrid war was spread is because initially it was a compromising idea. Yeah, it was a way to talk about a war without calling it either civil war or direct Russian aggression. Why the Ukrainian government and the Western supporters of Ukrainian government would not recognize that this is a civil war? Because then they should condemn Maidan, because then they should admit that the Maidan protest led to civil war, and the whole legitimacy of new Ukrainian authorities will be put into question, and the legitimacy of the Western foreign policy will also be put into question. But neither Ukrainian government nor its Western supporters can recognize that Russia is in actual state of war in Ukraine. In Ukraine, during all these almost 4 years, the state, the martial law was never adopted even once. So they are extremely cautious, in order not to call it war with Russia. So there are still diplomatic ties with Russia. There is still open border with Russia, which now there are more strict rules on crossing it, but you basically just need a passport to cross it. You don't need a visa to enter Ukraine. Then this was the initial story, in order to mobilize people to go to the army and so on. Then, with the more pronounced authoritarian tendencies within Ukrainian government, this tool of hybrid war was spread, how to say it? Yeah, it was applied to the whole territory of Ukraine, to the civil society, to the society as a whole. Yeah, so enemy was interjected within, and everyone basically is a target. As it actually happens in these separatist territories, when recently there was this coup d'etat in Lugansk, when the leader of the Lugansk state, separatist state, was overthrown, basically expelled from the country. This operation of the of his rival, the head of the head of local police, used the pretext of Ukrainian infiltrators, Ukrainian spies within the government of Lugansk. So this actually exists in both sides, but in Ukraine it's more sophisticated because it's under the gaze of the West. And since West also uses this notion of hybrid war with this, fake news stories, the idea that Russia manipulates the elections in the West, that Russia is like behind every corner. So Ukraine uses this, adopts this as a mechanism of authoritarian suppression of civil society. Yeah, and the far right is of course quite happy to use it to support, to use it as a support of its own legitimacy and its own relative autonomy to the government, because it can say that the government does nothing, it's powerless, it just screams that there is this war, but we actually are doing stuff. We are looking for actual separatists within Ukrainian society, bringing them to justice by beating them up and bringing them to the court and so on. Yeah, so that's the story. It's
I also want to briefly answer this one, because I don't think that it's like so totalitarian and all-encompassing as you put it. It's not like the whole Ukrainian society is living always thinking about the war going on in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine, but it's a very good excuse for the government when some things went wrong, and it's also a good excuse not to help or not to excuse to suppress emancipatory movements, emancipatory politics. For example, when we have feminist marches on 8th of March, you can always say it is not time for it because we have war and we will end this war and then we'll talk about it. For example, on the 8th of March, if you watch TV, you will not see any part of the demonstration or something like that. You will only see stories about women cooking something for the front and in such way celebrating this day. So that's basically it.
Yeah. Question?
Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a kind of specific question about the anarchist and left-wing nationalists, because I see some similarity in the anarchists. Right-wing is no surprise for me, because the right-wing libertarianism in the US is kind of anarchist when they understand themselves and they are not rich. And also I know there are some people in France who define or see themselves as anarchists but nationalists as well. So my question in this way is, do you know if they have international connection or they are just grown by themselves? And for the left-wing nationalists, I see some similarities in German history, because the 1920s communists have a Stalinist part, and they are later became members of the National Socialist Worker Party. And the national idea has always been in the German Democratic Republic, but called internationalism. So my question this way is, how did they exactly grow? Mm-hmm. Who are these people now and how big they are?
Mm-hmm. I think that ideological ancestors of these guys, like autonomous, okay, there are two separate stories. Okay, there is this autonomous resistance that combine anarchist autonomous ideas of autonomy and nationalism, and also these elements of more traditional socialism. And these guys who claim that they are syndicalists, anarcho-syndicalists, and that but that repeat a lot of rhetorics of the a lot of dominant state-imposed rhetorics about the war, for example. They both don't have anything to do with these American-style libertarians. In Ukraine, it's not really popular. This kind of libertarianism, it's like really small and not insignificant. It's not really a threat. These guys, autonomous resistance, the initial autonomous resistance group was self-styled after German autonomous far right, which exists in Germany as well, and they had some Strasserian influences, so influences of these Strasserian Nazis. Now I guess they also have influences from Ukrainian pre-Bolshevik socialism that was strongly pro-independent. So all this bricolage is merged into this image, and actually what you see here, this red and black, so of course it's not an anarchist flag, it's a flag of this Ukrainian insurgent army, this interwar far-right military organization. They play with these colors as if it can also be interpreted as anarchist, because there's some similarity. And now the trend also is to use the image of Nestor Makhno, the Ukrainian anarchist, the actually existing anarchist that we had. And they have these marches, Makhno marches, at the same time having also Bandera marches, who is this nationalist hero. So yeah, this is a complete bricolage.
Ну, нужно понимать, да, что они апеллируют к поздней УПА, как будто бы левой УПА. И на самом деле есть одна из программ поздней украинской повстанческой армии, которая... Ну, ты расскажешь, да? Okay.
Я перевожу.
Давайте, может, я переведу.
Да, ну, давай.
Ну, да.
So this like autonomous resistance, they are trying to refer to late Ukrainian insurgency army program.
Ну да, что там есть требования бесклассового общества и равенства.
That there are like agenda on classless society and equality.
Да, но вопрос, это очень мало исследованная тема, и вопрос, насколько реально эта программа воспринималась большинством участников этого движения.
But this topic is not good research, and it's not clear whether people who belong to the organization actually supported these ideas.
Не очень понятно, откуда эта идея у них появилась, после того, как они были так зваными органическими националистами, очень близкими к фашизму. Да.
It is not clear where they got this idea from, because before that they were very close to the fascist ideas, actually.
Классическое объяснение, что они пошли на восток Украины, советской Украины, там набрались от людей, столкнулись с тем, что люди не понимают их националистических, как бы авторитарных, иерархических взглядов, и вернулись назад уже с новым пониманием, да, мира, более социалистическим, более левым. Да.
Classic way of interpreting it is that members of this organization went to the east, where people didn't understand their nationalistic ideas and agenda, so they like talked to the people and came back with more ideas about equality and so on.
Да, но я не ручаюсь за как бы за то, что это объяснение стоящее, да, оно адекватное, потому что многие группы организаций украинских националистов на востоке страны были откровенно российскими, да.
But I'm not sure that this is a true story, because на востоке,
да.
Because many organizations in the east were actually also racist organizations.
Ну да, организации украинских националистов.
Like УПА. And
нет, организации украинских националистов.
Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists. That's the organization in the East. And I believe, like, if we speak about anarchist nationalist movement, I don't think they actually have like good connections to the people in Europe or to such organizations across Europe or across America. But I'm certain that nationalistic organizations do, and there are a lot of collaboration, a lot of like common concerts, a lot of German nationalists come to the front, like I believe also from all around the Ukraine, and Ukrainian nationalists are also wanting to support other European causes. For example, there were some people who from war veterans who told that they want to go to Spain and fight for the fight against Catalonian independence movement and fight for the for the Spain общая Испания, как это, неделимая, единая. United Spain. Yeah, and I believe this is very good illustration, like Roger Griffin's thought is a political scientist who is actually looking at all this nationalistic stuff, and he's writing on Grapuscular's right, saying that there might be only small right-wing organizations all around the country which have collaborations internationally, and they don't need to be in the parliament or in the government to be actually effective and to be powerful. So only this like collaboration between the small groups across Europe, for example, or across one country can already create quite powerful right-wing opposition.
I think it's even a more broad movement maybe, because also in Poland on all these nationalist marches, we got this Strasser style nationalists. We got the autonomous nationalists. We got some group, they call themselves Sturmowcy, something like Sturmverwaltung. And they use a lot of anarchist and radical left imaginary. So all these fists and all those megaphones. And they even this year on the nationalist march there was a black bloc. So I'm not sure, but it can also be just another strategy of just plain nationalists. It may have nothing to do with with an anarchist movement or people, but it's just another way of presenting of normal nationalists.
Ну, я хочу сказать, что автономные оперы это все-таки не автономные националисты, да.
But yes, I just wanted to add that autonomous resistance are not autonomous anarchists. Nationalists.
Да, то есть есть отдельная в Украине группа автономных националистов, но они абсолютно маргинальные, ничего не представляют из себя.
There are some groups of autonomous nationalists around Ukraine, but they are very marginal.
This autonomous resistance underwent a really serious evolution, because at some point they decided that they would completely abandon racism, that they would change Hitler for some works of Marx and other left guys, and they actually wrote a manifesto saying that we changed our ways. Now we will be more interested in class, in equality, in anti-capitalism, and so on. But it's of course it's not guaranteed that their nationalist impetus could not be transformed into other forms, as we see. Nationalism does not necessarily mean that you read Mein Kampf every day or something like this. But these guys, these guys underwent already 2 waves of evolution. When did they have this manifesto? Когда у них вот это было?
Мне кажется, в 2012 году они в первый раз его опубликовали, либо в 2013, вот так.
Где-то так. Okay, so.
Потому что вы так уже очень углубились в этот вопрос.
No, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the first was briefly before the war, in 2012 or 13, when they published this manifesto, and the second one when they get the influx of new blood of former socialists.
Yeah, maybe we'll move on.
Yeah.
To other questions if there are some.
Until when do we have time, actually?
We have no idea.
Yeah, actually, if you are tired, just go.
Сами решим, давайте.
If there are some questions, we will answer it. If not, we can move on to beer and stuff.
Mhm.
Well, I would like to know maybe from your point of view, and then what do you think or should Ukraine or could Ukraine a positive view for the Ukraine in the next 5 or 10 years? Where can it stand and what is necessary to come there?
Позитивные изменения в Украине в ближайшие 50 лет. Откуда они могут произойти?
The international support we can give you, or is needed, or something like something people from outside Ukraine can do to support your structure.
Нужна ли какая-то интернациональная поддержка?
I will answer the second part. You'll probably try to imagine the Ukraine because I just refuse to do it. I don't want to have nightmares today. So I just don't want to think about this. But the national support is really crucial. International support is really crucial. First of all, just stop the war, please, and then we will solve other problems. But first, it's really the anti-war. The anti-war movement is extremely important on various levels. I know that there are some international organizations that are anti-war and that they work in Ukraine, organizing some round tables, meeting various peoples, trying to find proper anti-war discourse, which is not present and it just structurally is impossible. But international quality of these groups gives them some legitimacy. It's not that easy to throw into jail European member of parliament. Yeah, but please don't do as some of the Linke people did, going and meeting some weird separatist leaders without any idea why. Then. The international pressure, of course, is very important on the level of these peace talks. That the countries, these great powers, and especially Germany should be more active in this, because Germany is, I guess, is the biggest the country that is mostly interested in peace in Ukraine here. Poland is too scared and not sure it can do anything. France is just simply not interested. US has its own agenda, but Germany is probably the only country who is the most interested in peace and who can pressurize both Ukrainian government and Russian into some form of settlement. And that's what probably the left, for example, in Germany can do, is to work both horizontally in Ukraine, going to Ukraine, talking to people and so on, and vertically pressurizing the government into being more active in international relations. Yeah, vision, future.
Okay.
Yeah, the best case scenario is that we all migrate and live on German welfare.
Ну, можно сказать, что мы не имеем я не знаю примеров в Европе, да, там успешных случаев в случае вооруженного конфликта, где левым удалось получить значительную поддержку.
I don't know such examples when, for example, in Europe, in case of war going on, the left could get a strong support.
Если мы берем примеры всех вооруженных конфликтов, которые случались на Кавказе, да, и около Кавказа, то они приводили к еще большей маргинализации левых и установлению авторитарных режимов, где никакой вообще свободы слова, да, ни о каком движении к демократии парламентской или буржуазной, да, и речи не идет.
If we look at war conflicts in Caucasus, they mainly led to marginalization, complete marginalization of the left, and to authoritarian governments which completely prohibited democratic freedoms. And yeah, it's hard to speak about democratic freedoms in such circumstances.
Балканы, где также был вооруженный конфликт, тоже не самый лучший пример, хотя левое движение там более развито, чем в Украине.
Balkans is also not such a promising example, although the left movement is much more developed there than in Ukraine.
Балканы также немножко другой контекст, у них другой бэкграунд, да.
Balkans is another context and they have different background.
Я думаю, что Украине больше подходит вариант Кавказа.
And I believe that Ukrainian case is a case which we have seen in Caucasus.
Но, безусловно, в обществе есть запрос на левую альтернативу, потому что есть много социальных проблем, нерешенных социальных проблем.
But still, people do need a left alternative because there are a lot of unresolved social problems.
Регулярно происходят забастовки, массовые протесты работников.
Regularly strikes and mass protests of workers are going on in Ukraine.
Но есть проблема, да, что во многом левую риторику, социальную риторику перебирают правые.
But the problem is that left and social rhetoric is also used now by nationalists and right wings.
Если прочитать программу Национального корпуса, это партия, которую создал Азов.
If we read National Corpus political party program, the political party which was created by Azov Battalion.
Если убрать оттуда милитаризм, традиционные семейные ценности,
if we get rid of militarism and traditional family values,
то вы получите неплохую левую партию.
We'll get a pretty good left party.
Такой социал-демократического.
Social-democratic kind of way.
Вот.
So, I don't know whether we answered the question on the vision or just.
Actually, from my point of view, as someone who's known Ukraine just from the TVs, like I have the current conflict in my mind, and I'm asking myself, is it something which is really targeting the US? Is it something like, is it, what was it? Is it do you have an point for it? Do you have your point of view? Because our liberals now say, okay, maybe we leave everything like this, so I don't know what should I have a position on it or not? And I can't imagine if Ukraine is something like, or I don't know if Ukrainians themselves see them really close to the European Union in the next years in the future, and maybe this whole process which started maybe could in the longer term help for democratic social structures.
Типа будет ли, да, видит ли Украина, что себя больше в будущем типа, приближаться к Европейскому Союзу? Может, это поможет демократическим изменениям, да? Правильно поняла?
Ну, мне кажется, что это либеральная среда вот представляет Европейский Союз как идеал демократии и то, к чему нам нужно двигаться, но на самом деле Украина никаких выгод от ассоциации с Европейским Союзом и сближением с Европейским Союзом не получила.
So actually this is a point of view of liberal milieu which sees European Union and entering the European Union as a way to solve all the Ukrainian problems, but and to start democratic changes. But if we look at European Association, which Ukraine side, it is not actually giving much benefits to Ukraine.
Но что как бы до этого Украина была довольно свободным государством, но сейчас все стало еще.
Когда? Когда?
Всегда.
Украина была свободным государством?
Ну да, реально можно было многое делать, да.
Okay, it was a bit more liberal.
Ну, более, да, демократическим государством, чем сейчас. И мы видим как бы обратные тенденции, при том, что она сближается с Европой, вот, и удаляется от Российской Федерации.
Well, Ukraine was more liberal earlier, but now, as it like trying to сблизиться, to come closer
converge
to
with Europe, or
yeah.
approach Europe.
It is getting less liberal, but I think it's a debatable question.
I mean, you just have to ask yourself on which terms Ukraine will actually, if it ever, because now it doesn't seem possible, if it ever joins Europe in some kind of in some kind of arrangement, then first with Europe, and second on which terms, because now Ukraine is clearly a case of peripheral economy, whose trade with Europe is basically trade in raw materials, low added value goods like iron ore, grains, I don't know, oil, I mean vegetable oil, of course, and wood. Yeah, you know, it's a clear case of degradation because and Ukraine doesn't get anything instead. Even foreign direct investment, which is like supposed to be the case in this new imperialism, it doesn't happen. Yeah, so the economy is just simply degrading, and it's I mean, if this continues like this, Ukraine will be actually the most backward country in all Eurasia. You know. So we should change something. Maybe you should even first change stuff in Europe, and then it will help us a lot.
Что мне кажется так, что мы вам еще показали очень такую пессимистическую картину, вот, очень плачевную и трагическую, но на самом деле мы-то, конечно, надеемся, что нам удастся организовать сильное движение, и мы стараемся и работаем над этим, но, как я говорил, у нас нету как бы четкого видения, мы не знаем, что делать, мы пробуем разные тактики, да, разные ходы.
So maybe we performed and talked a bit too much pessimistically and showed it so much tragic, like the situation in Ukraine. But actually, we do have hope, and we do try to organize a big movement, a strong movement, which will support solidarity and equality and so on. And but as I told you earlier, we don't have a clear vision, and we just try different moves and try different strategies to find the way out of it. And
look, it's still better with the left in Ukraine than in Belarus or Moldavia or Georgia. So there is still hope, or there is still a huge space for degradation. So
the main optimistic point is that it can always be worse.
Yeah.
So.
Actually, when you're talking about your journal and initiative group, and people that are orbiting around it, it really sounds for me kind of like the situation that led to Razem. I mean, of course I know nothing about your situation except what you said, but I get this this idea that it sounds like the situation a year or a half year before the Razem started. So I think you...
In which way is it similar?
That if you get two relatively strong camps, let's say, or I don't know, institutions maybe, that are functioning for a longer time, and they're being visible and they're attracting other people, then there will come a moment, probably from outside, that will just make it possible to do another initiative and bring new energy and bring more people to, you know, I don't know if it's gonna be the same organization like the Socialny Ruch, or it will change the name and bring people from the I'm so tired. People from the places that you don't even expect now. But it's, for me, it sounds doesn't sound so bad.
Doesn't sound bad, no, not at all. It's, no, I mean, I would be happy if your words actually come true, and let's see, work on it.
So I believe we can end on this note. I don't
Ты
know.
думаешь?
Ты хочешь что-то сказать?
Не, ну может кто-то хочет еще вопросы задать?
О, боже.
Stas saying that maybe somebody wants to ask some questions, so maybe one last question, or maybe not.
У нас еще много есть чего рассказать, да?
So yeah, we have a lot to talk about, and we can
Lot of
talk
entertaining
about it
stories,
in in some other atmosphere. So maybe end up now. Thank you for your attention. Good.
Алис good. Алис капут. Что ты думаешь, мы не слишком черно все нарисовали?
Ой, да нормально.
Я думаю, что мы всех замучили и все уже устали. Я тоже устала. Я пойду выпить что-нибудь, потому что у меня горло пересохло очень сильно. Thank you.
Yeah,
Dankeschön.